Okay. Hi you guys. Today we're really getting into it. I have a very long overdue video on basically my most asked questions in my DMs in terms of moving to Paris, going to IFM, what that transition actually looks like, and we're gonna dive into it today because I've been putting off this video, but I have all my notes written down. You're gonna see me looking down at my computer just so I can try and hit all the points that I want to share. But without further ado, let's get into it. If you're new here, my name is Juliana. I'm an American who now lives in Paris. I'm currently completing my end of studies internship, and I went to IFM Paris here for my master's in international fashion and luxury management. Throughout my year, I've made a lot of content around the school and my experience, and so this is just going to be a video where you can find a lot of my answers in one place to simplify everything. So let's get into it. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to need a student visa when you get into a school in France. So submit those applications. It's usually around this time of year. I remember it was beginning of January when I applied for IFM, but around this time of year is when you're applying to different schools. Apply to the ones you're interested in. Once you get in, then you can start worrying about the student visa process. In order to be a student here, you need a visa because with a US passport, you can only come to an EU country for 3 months, I think it is. So you're gonna need a long stay student visa, which is basically just a visa that allows you to stay as a student for a defined period of time. When you get into a school like IFM, you're given paperwork. Like you have official documents that say you're gonna be a student at the school from this year to this year. These are the dates that you would need a visa for. The acceptance letter is going to prove to the French government that you're a legit student and going to an actual school here. Before you even touch the visa website, you're going to go to Campus France USA, and on there it's going to have a checklist of the things that you're going to need. You're going to create an account, upload all of the documents that you have. It'll be like your acceptance letter, your passport, a transcript from your undergraduate university, and maybe a few other things, and then you're going to pay the Campus France fee. Then once Campus France approves your application, you're going to get a reference number, and that reference number is key because you need it for your student visa appointment. So make sure you do it in this order. You go to the Campus France website, you get the reference code, and then you go to the official visa application website. You find a consulate that's closest to you. Typically they're in big cities. I went to the one in Boston. I know that there's one in New York City, Boston, I want to say Washington DC, Chicago, and I'm sure other big cities across the US. Once you have that reference code from Campus France, you're going to go onto the visa website and you're going to create an account on there. Make sure you're saving your passwords to everything somewhere. And you're going to fill out their very long application form. And you're going to choose the option that says long stay student visa. It's going to ask you questions about your school, where you're going to be staying, how you're going to financially be supporting yourself. And for the where you'll live portion, we're going to get into that a little bit later on. I'll tell you where I found my apartment and different websites that I would recommend. But I personally was looking for apartments at the same time as applying for the student visa, but I don't think they're as strict about you needing to have an apartment right when you get there. Once you've submitted your application on the visa website, you're going to print out your appointment confirmation, the checklist that they provide of all the documents that you need when you have your in-person appointment, and the completed application. Then you basically wait for your in-person appointment at the consulate that you chose that's closest to you. My biggest tip for this appointment is get some sort of binder or folder where you can organize all of your papers, because I've done it now 2-3 times and it's always as stressful as the first time, and it helps so much to just have everything organized with notes at the top. I would get little sticky notes and just label copy of my passport, transcript, mail, the random physical items I needed to have. I'd have them labeled so that when they asked, I could quickly flip to the page without getting overwhelmed and looking for it across 12 different pages. For the appointment, you'll need your passport photos, an acceptance letter from your school, the Campus France confirmation that should have your confirmation number on it, proof of housing or a temporary address. If you have a friend that lives in Paris or know anyone that lives in Paris, you can use their address. Or if you're just staying in an Airbnb for the first few days while you figure out an apartment situation, you can use that as well. Proof of funds, this can be from your personal bank account or I believe a guarantor, someone in your family that is willing to help you. Health insurance, and the application printout. Once you get to your appointment, they're going to check all of your documents. Then they're also going to take your fingerprints and your photo. And they hold on to your passport so that they can process your student visa. It becomes a sheet in your legitimate passport, and that ends up getting mailed to you a few weeks later. I think it was around 2 or 3 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. It gets mailed to your home address. And this processing time can literally take anywhere from a few days to a few weeks. I think the first time I filled it out, I got it in 2 weeks. The second time took a bit longer, closer to 3 weeks. You want to make sure you're timing this well before you're planning to leave the country. Now, this is the part that most people forget. You have to validate your visa once you get to France. The process is really simple. There's going to be a little sheet that they add into your passport that basically tells you exactly what you do. You go on a website, you put in your details, and you're going to pay a tax stamp fee. And then once you've done that, you're validated, you're good to go. Quick recap. First thing you're gonna do, you're gonna get accepted to a French school. Second thing is register and get approved by Campus France. Once you've gotten the Campus France number registration code, you're gonna apply for the long stay student visa. Then you're gonna go to your consulate appointment. It was Boston for me, could be a different big city for you. You're gonna wait for approval and get your passport back in the mail, and you're gonna validate your visa once you're in France. It feels very overwhelming at first, but trust me, if you just take it one step at a time and do a little bit each day, it's very doable and you'll get it all done and it'll be okay. Next topic is finding an apartment in Paris, and I just made a TikTok about this because I swear I get a comment about this at least once a week, if not multiple times a week. I've seen it in my DMs, I've seen it in my comments. Trust me, I hear you. And personally, this was the most exciting part of moving to Paris for me. It was my first time living alone, and I used the website Logis. Logis gives you the option of getting furnished apartments. They're everywhere in Paris. I lived in a 1-bedroom in the 13th my first year I moved to Paris, and now I'm in a studio in the Marais, and again, I use Logis. When I studied abroad in Paris, our housing was found for us, and it was through Blue Ground. They have beautiful apartments on Blue Ground. I would say Blue Ground and Airbnb rentals are the most expensive in terms of what you're going to be paying monthly for an apartment. But again, at least for the Blue Ground ones, not so much the Airbnb rentals, but the Blue Ground ones, they're all decorated. They have everything that you need, plates, silverware, blankets, pillows, like the whole thing, just ready to move in, but you're paying a premium for that. Another website is Paris Attitude. I was going on Paris Attitude just as much as I was on Logis, and I would trust them as well. And then there's Jinka, which I know people have used, and I think Jinka is better if you're looking for furnished or unfurnished apartments. You can see both. For some reason, I feel like it's easier to get scammed on Jinka though, and I don't know that I would personally use it, but it is popular. Now we're going to move on to what you can expect at IFM, because there isn't much information out there. I went right into the second year, which is what I'll speak on, and I was pretty nervous because I didn't know anyone other than the few people I connected with online who I also knew were going to the program but hadn't really met or spoke to at all prior. And the whole first week was just orientation for all of the other second year students. It was honestly great. None of us knew anyone else, so everyone was just really open to making new friends and meeting and speaking with everyone, which I loved. I also want to say we did some walking tours during that first week, and it was just a very comfortable atmosphere. Everyone was so nice, and it was really easy to just like mingle and make friends with people in that first week. What I found interesting was that you won't really find much online about the acceptance rate, which I feel like in the US is how we judge how good or competitive a school may be. But I will say that within our orientation week, we got to see the numbers and the different percentages of acceptance. In my year, the acceptance rate was 9%. So I can tell you very straightforward, it's an extremely competitive school. It's very prestigious in Paris, but also just in Europe. It's very well known. They have incredible connections, and I would definitely argue it's the best fashion management program in Paris. Getting into the nitty-gritty of what you're actually doing during the second year, there are 2 really big business cases that happen. Every year you work with different brands. It is the most intense project, in my opinion, throughout the entire year because it's semester long. The stakes are extremely high because you're presenting to the CEO of these brands, and if the CEO can't make it, it's their most high-level team, and the winning team gets a prize. You obviously get a really good grade, and you just want to do well because these are really cool brands. My year, we did Prada Beauty, and then we did Ami Paris. And not to flex, but my group did win both business cases, which there are reasons why I think that happened. We were extremely well prepared. We practiced a shit ton. We had our timing down to a T, which I think is so important. If they say the presentation has to be 10 minutes, you better believe it cannot be 10 minutes and 15 seconds. It shows you weren't prepared. It shows that you didn't actually practice hard enough, in my opinion. We went as far as to coordinate our outfits. We all said we were going to dress professionally in black, and both times the 2 different brands ended up complimenting us on this. So dress to impress, dress to show up as the person you want to be. And as crazy as those presentations were, and even though they were so much work, I think it was the coolest educational experience I have ever had to be presenting a high-level presentation like that, and for the stakes to have been very high. And just the exposure you have of being at a school like IFM to the amount of CEOs that we were able to meet that come into our school and give conversations when they don't do interviews typically. It's hard to find podcasts or really any information online about them. For them to be sitting in front of you and to individually answer your questions is pretty crazy. Aside from the business cases at IFM, there is a lot of presentations. More presentations than I have ever done in my entire life. And the school is not academic in the sense where you're doing statistics. You do a finance class, but it's not the most complicated math you've ever done in your life. It's very heavily based and weighed on your creativity, which is something I have never experienced before, but personally absolutely loved, because that's exactly what I want to do in my future with my career. You're getting graded on the quality of your presentations, how well you're able to speak in front of a group, how reliant you are on notes, and how prepared you actually show up, the originality of your ideas, and how in line they are with certain brands and codes. It's honestly unlike anything I could compare it to, and it's the coolest thing ever. I also want to mention that the days are long. I remember being in classes most days from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. and in the winter this was particularly tough because I would wake up, it would still be dark out when I basically got to school, and then when I was leaving the school it was pitch black out as well. So barely saw the sun. And then the school is not just fashion management, they also have a really great fashion design program, and you're kind of split in two. The building is quite big, it's right on the Seine River, it's bright green, it's very hard to miss. But when you walk in and up the stairs, you have one side of the building that's all of the design students and their studios, and then the other side is all of our business classes. I do wish it was a little bit more integrated. We see each other, but we'd never have classes with the fashion design students or vice versa. But it's really fun to get to see through the glass walls of the studios and see all the incredible designs that the design students are coming up with. IFM is a place where you're going to see students with massive amounts of foam or of silk or of whatever material, and they're lugging it across the school, or they're outside getting it into their studio. It's crazy, but it's so fun. Another question that I've gotten is how I can afford to live in Paris and how I just offset costs financially. And I'll be very straightforward that Paris is not cheap. Coming from the US, I will compare it to grocery prices. If I want to go out and get myself a matcha, that'll cost me 6 or 7 euros, which is about $8, which in my opinion, that's a lot of money. And unfortunately, fashion is not a high-paying job, so things add up very quickly. Luckily for me, a lot of my past experience has been in digital marketing, so while at IFM, I was able to keep a lot of my remote jobs and still work in tandem with going to school. Would I recommend it? Not necessarily, because honestly, it got to be a lot between my course load and needing to work, so if you have the option to not work, absolutely take it. It is very hard to do both, but it's not impossible, and moving to a city like this, it's really hard to be able to just afford going out and trying new restaurants and coffee shops without having some sort of income coming in. And the last big topic I wanted to cover was, do you need to speak French when coming into the program? And the big answer is no. The entire program is in English. All of the professors are French though, so it's nice if you can understand French, because then you can understand their side comments or when they can't translate something immediately. I think you feel a lot more included and in the know if you do speak French. And personally, I wish so badly that I had started learning French prior to coming to IFM. I spoke zero French. I took Spanish for, I want to say, 8 years. It was my minor at UConn. I always thought I was going to end up in Spain, but that was before I got into fashion, and France made a lot more sense for me. But I did not start learning French until I came to IFM last September, and have I learned a lot in the last year and a half? Yes. But could I have been further along? Yes. And I think about it often. I also think it's important to mention that when the internship hunt begins, which is typically around December, January of your second year, which is very early in my opinion, we'll get into that. But once it starts, if you speak French, you're at a major advantage, especially because we're in France. So of course, not everyone is going to speak English, and you can't expect these massive French luxury brands to speak English for you. I think November, December, January were very early months to start worrying about the internship, but it happens, and very quickly it's all that everyone starts to talk about. And I remember people literally coming up to me asking what brands I'm interviewing with, how the interviews are going, if I have an interview yet, if I have an internship figured out yet, and feeling so stressed out about this all the time. But if I could go back to my past self, I would tell her that it's not that deep. Everyone finds an internship, and I'm telling you, everyone ends up finding an internship. It all works out. You're gonna be okay. You don't need to start worrying about it in December. You can start worrying about it in February, in March, it doesn't have to be within the first 2 months of your second year. Also, IFM helps you with this process by putting on these career fairs where you're able to meet one-on-one with recruiters from the biggest brands. There was Chanel, Louis Vuitton, Celine, any big French luxury brand you could think of was probably there. And you stand in a line with your resume in like a manila folder or a binder or something, and you're all dressed up and you literally wait to one by one sit with the recruiter and pitch yourself. And I remember I would be memorizing scripts the night before in French of what I wanted to say. And of course, my French wasn't good enough to do the entire interview in French. So I would have a whole script memorized where I would tell them what I was looking for, what my past experience was in, and eventually in French ask them if we could transition to English. You're trying to establish a sense of, this is where my French level is at. I'm willing to keep learning. I'm willing to show you that I'm interested in learning, but obviously I'm not there yet. And some brands will straight up tell you, I'm sorry, but the entire team is in French, and if you're not fluent, it's going to be very difficult. Which honestly, it's great when they do that because you're not wasting their time, they're not wasting yours, but it is extremely humbling. That whole career fair experience was the most anxiety provoking for me, but did it force me to grow and learn French so much faster? Yes, it did. And did I still end up finding an internship anyways? Yes, I did. And everyone else did as well. And that is it for all of the main themes that I wanted to cover in this video. There is definitely a lot more, and feel free to leave any comments on this video of things that you'd want me to go into more, or maybe topics I hadn't touched on that you're interested in. But if you're thinking about applying to IFM, I would 100% recommend it. And I know that I personally would not have the opportunities that I have today if I hadn't gone there, and I feel extremely lucky to have been able to go there. So if you're thinking of moving to Paris, of applying to IFM, do it. My handle is the same on Instagram and TikTok. It's just Juliana Sapar everywhere. Feel free to follow along, message me if you have any questions. I try to answer all of my DMs and genuinely give you guys like in-depth responses, because I remember being in your shoes, not knowing if I was going to move to Paris, but wanting it to work out so badly, and having a really hard time finding information on this exact stuff literally just 2 years ago. That is it for today. I'm sorry I've been MIA on YouTube. I'm going to try to do much better in 2026, but I hope that you gained something out of this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.